welcome to Islamic Awakening, a program that delves deeply into the issues affecting both Muslims and Islam today. I'm your host, Ahmed Hanif. Today I'm asking Professor Tariq Ramadan, do Muslims have a genuine choice to make amid growing right-wing rhetoric by the mainstream parties? Research shows that numerically Muslims have the power to significantly influence the election in a number of constituencies in the UK. Information from the Office of National Statistics found that Muslims face the worst job discrimination than any minority group in Britain. Muslim men are 76% less likely to get a job compared to their white Christian counterparts with similar qualifications. Experts say political parties need to make an effort to understand this frustration and offer level playing field solutions to the Muslim community. So why do Muslims feel so disenfranchised from the mainstream politics? Why? Why do we feel so disenfranchised? Welcome to the show. Salaam alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
I ask you the question first and I give you salams.
Salaam alaikum. I think that once again, when it comes to the situation of Muslims in the West, Western Muslims, it could be in the UK or it could be in any other countries, I think we really have to get a better picture of what is happening. And the way you started your introduction is a good one, because very often we think about, okay, there is a religious problem. So there is a problem between Western countries and Islam. And we keep on having this discussion with politicians, with the leaders, and I have been doing this for the last 30 years, talking to politicians and governments saying we don't have a problem. And in fact, that's not the real issue. The real issue is not about Muslims living in the West. We don't have a problem with the West. We respect, we abide by the law of the countries, and this is it. This is what is happening now. And we have millions of European Muslim Democrats. They abide by the law, they are citizens, and they are trying their best to contribute. And it's exactly the same in the States. The problem is when we come to the ground and we try to understand what is happening, and this is why we see that the socioeconomic factors are the problem. The problem is that if your name is, first, if you are a black resident or citizen, and if your name is Abdullah, or your name is whatever, Fatima, for example, you will find that in the job market, there is a great deal of discrimination. There is a job discrimination, there is a housing discrimination, there is a geographical fragmentation of the society, and you cannot get some houses and housing in some areas when your name is not exactly fitting into the white middle class. So we need to come to this, because keeping on talking about Islam in the West and not coming to the real issues, the socio-economic problems, this is wrong. And this is why I would say, as I'm always doing or saying to the Western Muslims or to the British Muslims, look, if you are serious about being part of this society, if you are serious about being involved in politics, you don't only come when they are targeting Muslims because they are targeting the Prophet, peace be upon him, or saying something which is discriminatory about Islam. That's not to be involved in the society. You don't have a sense of belonging if you only react to what is said about you. You have to act to be involved in all the sectors, in all the fields, in all the discussions and the issues. One of them is, let us talk about social justice in this country. Let us talk about structural racism in this country. And we'll see that it's not a problem of Islam, it's a problem of you dealing with Asian people, Muslims, because there is now a way of framing the Muslims as alien to the society, and you have a new category which is not a legal category when you are a foreign citizen. You are a citizen with the passport, but the fact that you are Muslim or perceived as an Arab or a black, you are not exactly a citizen, and you are going to be treated in such a way on the job market.
Interestingly, white Muslims, white converts to Islam, find a common experience with Muslims. They are also treated as foreigners.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. Yes. But this is where there is a double responsibility here, is that because they become Muslim, they are perceived as alien to the society. But there is also a factor which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Some of our brothers and sisters converting to Islam are not becoming Muslims. Sometimes they are Arabizing themselves, Turkishizing themselves, right, Pakistanizing themselves. So they are rejecting their own culture and they put themselves outside. This is exactly what the opposite of what should be done. We should hope and work on the fact that these Western Muslims or white converts to Islam are helping the other way around, helping for us to be involved in this society. So I would say that our discourse and our involvement within the society should be something which is paradoxical. If you want Islam to be accepted as what it is really, a British religion, a European religion, a Western religion, you as citizens should speak less about Islam and more about common principles.
About the community
and common
Why
principles.
don't Muslims vote? Why do you think Muslims don't vote?
Because exactly this is what I'm saying. They don't have the sense of belonging. They play the victim, or they don't like us. We are not going to change anything. And they think that in fact their body is here, their hearts are there, or their minds are there, and they deal with issues in the countries of origin, and they don't understand that everything has to be played here. If you want to change the foreign policy of this country, you have to be involved as citizens.
But is this a generational thing? I mean, I can understand, let's say, that generation that came here, immigrated into the Western world, might have this type of connection, and also it might not just be restricted up to Muslims. I think maybe Polish people might have the same attitude, and so forth. True. But what about their children, for example? Their children who are born in Western countries, they might have a different, or they definitely have a different attitude to where home is and to where their responsibilities lie.
That's true, and it's right and wrong at the same time, because it's a generational problem. That's true. The first generation, they came, they are still. But if we see what is happening with the younger generations, they are very much involved in politics when it comes to emotional reaction to what is happening in Palestine, to what is happening in Syria, the anti-war coalition in Iraq. Yes, that's fine, but this is all reactionary politics.
Right.
So it's not a constructive, it's not a long run. So we want them to be much more involved in their understanding that, look, it's not only important to get a passport of a country, it's to get the sense of belonging. And the sense of belonging is you have to be everywhere. Why don't you see so many Muslims talking about education in this country? Why don't we see them speaking about social justice? Why don't we see them talking about what is happening in jails, for example, and what immigration? Look, immigration, the way we are treating immigrants in the West, is just insane. No words coming from the Muslims. Not because we are coming from there, but this is a question of principles. So we have to be much more involved in the national issues that are affecting all the people. And we have to be involved in politics. So I would like us from within to teach the young Western or British Muslims to be much more involved in politics by understanding something which is the starting point of everything in Islam, by the way. It's you start with your responsibility, not with your rights. And you are responsible wherever you are to make this country better. So you have to be involved in politics. And you should know today, with millions of Western Muslims in the United States of America, as well as in Europe, that you have power to change the result of any election. You were saying this in the introduction. We know, for example, that in France, for example, the difference between Sarkozy, who lost the last election, and Hollande, who won the last election, this was 1.6 million voters. The Muslims, 1.9 million Muslims voted of French Muslims voted for Hollande. So they made the difference. They were instrumental in helping one to win and the other to lose.
Right.
So it means that we have a political power. Don't make it a religious power to support Islam. Don't go to Hollande and don't go to any Cameron, for example, say, okay, we have some questions about the way you are going to treat Muslims. No, we have some question about the way you are going to treat this country.
Right.
Here, as the domestic policies, but also in the Middle East or in the global South, because at the end everything is connected. Everything is connected. The way you treat people there is going back to us. So we want to know about why are you so silent when it comes to Gaza? Why are you so silent when it comes to African people being killed? Why are you so silent where your foreign policy is in fact having as an impact of the killing of millions of people? So this is for the foreign policy. We have to be involved and to show in our countries that we also are the voice for the voiceless. I'm not in the West. I'm a Western Muslim. I'm a European Muslim, but I know where I'm coming from. I'm not going to be quiet in the West by saying, oh, I want so much to be accepted that I am going to avoid talking about Egypt, my country of origin, or the global South. No, the opposite. I am the South is coming back and telling you here that we have some responsibility.
Now, while you're talking, I'm thinking about two trends that have just begun. One of them is expanding the Muslims' involvement, at least on an ideological or theoretical basis, as bringing back ethics into politics in the Western world, right? Where Muslims are actually doing just that, seeing their society from the point of view of responsible members of the society.
Exactly.
And knowing that Islam can bring something to the table in terms of bringing back ethics into politics. And the other question is, what can we do to realize this? What kind of organizational strategies can we take to get the Muslims to be involved in politics? What are the conditions that we might need for that?
Yes, I think this is a critical question. We also have to look, just to come to your question, through the angle of what is happening on the ground. We have some trends, the Salafi literalists, supported by all this ideology of what we call today the Wahhabism, but saying you don't have to be involved in politics, you just follow the people who are elected, which is accurate for them because this is exactly what they want. They don't want critical thinking. Right. And you have some other groups saying to be involved in politics is haram, and especially in non-Muslim majority countries. We first have to deal with this by saying this is not the Islamic understanding. The majority, the mainstream is saying the opposite. You have to be involved and you have to be involved in this. And the way you have to be involved is exactly this, in ethical terms. Your added value in politics is not power for the sake of power, money for the sake of money, running the country for the sake of being the one who is running the country. You are dealing with politics with this understanding that politics and government should serve the people. And this is where we need to be equipped, because politics is corrupting people. That's the reality of it, and there is it's very difficult to keep your principles when you are involved with power and money and interest. So to be equipped in a way which is what is your intention? What do you want to do? And then to have something which has to do with professionalism, which should not go like this just for the sake of protecting our interest as Muslims. No, supporting and presenting our principles as citizens, and the principles are what we are talking. This is really the ethical politics when it comes to dignity of the people, no racism, struggling for. We talked about this in one of our programs, for example, by saying social jihad, that we need to be. Jihad should be adapted to the environment. A social jihad is a jihad for justice, a jihad against racism, a jihad for equality when it comes to the way people are treated by law. And then we need institutions. But we should not think of isolating ourselves, having an Islamic party, and this is going to come us versus the society. No.
Right.
Bring ethics everywhere. Go to this party, to go to that party, be in these institutions. Be visible, not out of the way you speak about Islam, but as the way you act as a Muslim, a Muslim citizen. So this is why we have to nurture this awareness that we have to be everywhere in the public sphere with an ethical visibility.
Now, how do we balance the two, right? I mean, we're talking largely now about Muslims acting as responsible citizens in a country.
Yeah.
At the same time, as we had mentioned in the opening remarks, that you have Muslims are the targets, or they suffer specific indignities and discriminations and so forth. So there's a need also to address that. How could Muslims bring these two into politics? Would it be the same politics, for example? You know, or could it be another type of politics? Let's say, for example, you know, politics in terms of the elections and so forth. You know, you deal with wider concerns, and now politics in terms of dealing with your own problems as maybe social activism. How do we deal with it?
I think it's not mutually exclusive. It's at the same time the same and a different way of dealing with politics, of doing politics. We need to be creative. In fact, you know, creativity is something that is missing in the way we deal with the surrounding environment. We are repeating and say, okay, no, we should do the same when it comes to be involved in political parties, to be involved in the dynamics that is reaching out. Yes, but now we also have to deal with some of our issues and try to be involved. We need to understand that social activism is politics. Politics is not the election.
Right.
The election is the structural frame through which you can get some results. But at the end, you have to be involved in changing the mindset. We don't realize that, in fact, our presence is going to change the collective psychology of the people. And this is where we should come with some of the issues. And by making them shared issues, for example, if, as a British Muslim, I'm 76% less likely to get a job. I'm not the victim, it's not only my business, it's our business as a society.
Right.
So to make our concerns that are, we have figures and facts, the global.
As part of the general concern.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you understand, it's the way we frame this, not as people complaining about the way they are treated, but people asserting that this has to be reformed because this is the collapse of our society if we accept this. Nelson Mandela said, the quality of a society is assessed by the way this society is treating its minority. So the people who have less power, and this is where you can understand where are we heading, what are we doing. And we have the responsibility to phrase this, to frame it into something which is universal, our shared principles, our common future. In fact, if you accept that women could be mistreated or get less salary for the same skills, or black people are discriminated, or racism is institutionalized, on the long run, the victims are not going to be them, but all of us. The way you talk about this is important.
Now, while we're talking about politics, we're saying that, you know, conventional politics, electoral politics, and activism, they're all the same. They're the same. What about the issue of power? What I mean is power in the media, okay, power in economics. You know, because who controls the media controls people's thinking, you know. And economically, we're in an age where, for example, economic power tends to dictate what the political agenda is. How do you see that as a factor in the empowerment of Muslims and their impact upon the political stage?
Yes, I think you put it the right way. Chandra Muzaffar, who is a Malaysian intellectual, was saying once, you know, we have a problem. We don't like to speak about power. We need to speak about power. And you are right. We need to speak about power, but not power, political power. All types of power that we have within the society. Foucault was saying, language is power. We need to speak. We need to have intellectuals visible everywhere as citizens. We need to have educated scholars, students. Now it's your time. Not only men, women. Don't ask me to come and to say we don't have a problem with women in Islam while I'm a man repeating this. That's the problem. Exactly, the problem is there.
Right.
We need women to be. And this is where we have this intellectual power. Linguistic power should be now you speak English, or you speak French, or you speak German, as your fellow citizens speak out. This is where you have to be. Now it's not only this, social power, institutions, this is where we have to be. Economic power. We need to understand that some political decisions are taken because we are economically helpless. We don't know how to do this. And for example, I was talking to French people by saying, you have to be involved in politics. Look at what is happening in Reunion Island, which is a French department. You don't treat the Muslims there the way they are treated in the metropole. You know why? Because they have money. It's an economic power. So no one dares to tell them, remove the headscarf.
Right.
Okay, we remove the headscarf, let us deal with money now. It's not going to happen. We need to have this. So we need to understand that economic power, we have to be involved within the society and to get our own economic independence, our own economic, not our own, but an economic structures and institutions that are giving us some social and political power. So it's all connected. It's intellectual power, social power, economic power, media power. Why? Stop complaining about the fact that the big media are not covering the world the way it should be. Be involved, do your job, be there, be a journalist. And for example, something which is very important that we are underestimating, which is the cultural media, arts. We have to be in the business. It's shaping minds, it's shaping perception. Why don't you use your creativity and to be involved there to give another rational, another narrative in the whole thing? So power is essential, but it's multidimensional. It's not only the power of the state, it's the power of the people in all the fields.
We got 1 minute, but I want to ask you this question. Some people think that we're living in a post-democratic world. You know, that the people who actually really pull the strings in politics, in the government, are the interest groups, the lobby groups. What do you think about that? And what could Muslims do?
I think it's not a post-democratic, it always was the case, but we have an optic illusion that we think, oh, it's all about politics. No, we need to know that there are transnational institutions that have much more power than the elected president. So we need to deal with this and to have a way of talking about this, which is very important. Even in Muslim majority countries, we have, you know, some governments that are very strict with, you know, the so-called Islamic principles that they are implementing, and then behind this, they have a completely haram economy. They don't care about this because, in fact, so we need to have something which is to stop having a perception that what we see is where power is. So, post-democratic process. At the end of the day, we know that not everything is going to be solved in the political arena, but it is a critical one. And at the same time, we need to be very clear on bringing to the fore all the economic interests that are not talked about, but are instrumental in the way the world is going on today.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very important that for us to consider the fact that Muslims today in Western countries still see themselves as guests of these Western countries and do not let themselves be fully involved in that particular society. I say fully involved because what came out of this discussion was that part of that involvement is the political sphere in terms of the elections and so forth. But there are other aspects, cultural. Dr. Tariq was talking about language, getting our word out, getting our voices heard, and so forth. And so I think what Muslims need to do is to really seriously think hard about why are they there and what can they do for the societies in which they live. And in this way, this is the most important empowering attitude that Muslims can have. Sadly, we've run out of time. I'd like to thank Professor Ramadan and of course all of you at home for watching, and until next time and another edition of Islamic Awakening, it's a goodbye from me and the whole team.